The air in my Richmond, Virginia, Victorian home hung heavy with the musty scent of old wood and grief as I stood in the doorway, my black funeral dress clinging to my skin, still wrinkled from yesterday's service for my husband, Marcus. The dim light filtering through the lace curtains cast long shadows across the hardwood floor, where my grandmother's antique rocking chair, Marcus's favorite spot for reading his evening newspaper, creaked under the rough hands of Gerald, his older brother, as he hoisted it toward the front door. My heart pounded, a dull thud echoing in my chest, as Raymond Coleman, Marcus's father, barked orders like a general, his voice booming through the living room. This property reverts to blood family now. Pack your bags and get out, Ashley. I froze, my trembling fingers clutching the doorframe, the cold brass knob biting into my palm. Just 24 hours ago, I'd buried Marcus, my gentle veterinarian husband of 8 years, in St. Paul's Episcopal Church, where we'd vowed to love each other forever. Now, his family was dismantling our life, treating me like a squatter in the home his grandfather had left him. The Colemans, Raymond, his wife Patricia, and their sons Gerald and Timothy had always seen me as an outsider, a middle-class nurse who'd never fit their image of a proper Coleman wife. For years, I'd endured their icy receptions, their subtle digs about my practical background, their whispers about better matches for Marcus, like the private school daughters of their country club friends. I'd swallowed my pride for Marcus, believing his hope that they'd come around. But now, with him gone, their masks were off. The floorboards groaned as Timothy hauled out a box of my wedding photos, carelessly stacking them on the porch, the glass frames glinting in the October light. "You have no right to be here," I said, my voice low but steady, though my throat burned with unshed tears. Raymond turned, his weathered face twisting into a smug grin. "No, right? This is family property, girl. Always has been, always will be. Marcus is gone, and you're not blood. Simple as that." His words hit like a slap, echoing the same sentiment I'd heard at family dinners for years, conversations that hushed when I entered, seating arrangements that pushed me to the table's edge. I was Ashley Coleman, 37, a nurse who'd worked nights to put herself through school, who'd loved Marcus for his kindness, not his family's wealth. Yet here they were, changing the locks while I was at my sister Janet's house in Glen Allen, grieving. "Marcus wouldn't want this," I whispered, my gaze fixed on the scuff marks, Gerald's boots left on the floor Marcus and I had refinished together. Raymond snorted. "Marcus is dead. He was too soft-hearted about you. We warned him you were after the money, but he didn't listen. That charade's over now." The accusation stung, but it wasn't new. 8 years ago, at my first Coleman family dinner, Patricia had called me practical, like it was a curse, her voice dripping with disdain as I cleared dishes while she praised some debutante to Marcus. Raymond had grilled me about prenups before our wedding, insisting the house, the land, and Marcus's veterinary practice stayed with blood. I'd nodded politely then, for Marcus's sake, but now, watching them loot my home, a cold resolve settled in my chest. They thought I was weak, temporary, a gold digger they could bully out. They were wrong. That night, alone at Janet's, the weight of their betrayal crushed me. I sat on her couch, the faint smell of her lavender candles doing little to soothe the ache in my heart. I opened my laptop, desperate for an outlet, and posted on R, divided by relationships, pouring out my story. AITA, for fighting my in-laws who are stealing my home after my husband's death. The responses flooded in, strangers' words lighting up my screen like beacons. "NTA, they're vultures, get a lawyer," one user wrote. Another shared a story of their own in-laws trying to claim an inheritance, urging me to check for a will. "You're not alone," a third commented, linking to a Psychology Today article about surviving family conflict, which said 60% of women feel overwhelmed by in-law stress, a statistic from Good? Is that mirrored my exhaustion? Their support felt like a lifeline, pulling me from despair. Janet, pacing her living room, her curly hair bouncing with every furious step, was livid. "They can't kick you out of your own house, Ashley. You were married to Marcus for 8 years. Call a lawyer now." Her voice cracked with the same protective fire she'd shown when we were kids, and I managed a small smile, thinking of Marcus's quiet strength. He'd known his family's true colors, hadn't he? 3 months before his death, after overhearing them at his cousin's wedding plotting my peaceful exit, Marcus had shown me a folder of legal documents, a will, deeds, a letter. "I've been working with Charles Piton," he'd said, his voice heavy with sadness, standing in our kitchen, the scent of coffee lingering. "Everything's yours, Ashley, the house, the practice, all of it. They'll never take it from you." I'd been stunned, reading his letter that detailed their cruelty, from Patricia's snide remarks to Raymond's obsession with family legacy. Now, as I sat at Janet's, I clutched my phone, ready to call Charles, but a memory stopped me. Back at the house that morning, as I'd watched from my car, I'd overheard Raymond on his phone, his voice smug through the open window. "Yeah, the real estate company can list it next week. Gerald's family will move in once she's out." "No. She won't fight it, she's got nothing." My blood ran cold. They weren't just taking my belongings. They were planning to sell my home out from under me. I dialed Charles's number, my hands shaking, the creak of Janet's floorboards fading as his voice answered. "Ashley, are you at the house?" he asked. "I'm outside, watching them. They're moving everything." "Don't go in alone," he said firmly. "I'm bringing the documents. Let them dig their hole deeper." As I hung up, staring at the Victorian house glowing faintly under the streetlights, I realized this was only the beginning. The Colemans thought they'd won, but they had no idea what Marcus had left behind, or what I was about to do. The chill of the October evening seeped through the cracked window of my Victorian home in Richmond, Virginia, as I stood in the driveway, my breath fogging in the air, watching Charles Piton's silver BMW pull up, his briefcase glinting under the streetlights. My heart still raced from overhearing Raymond Coleman's phone call about selling my house, his smug assurance that I'd have nothing to fight with. But as Charles stepped out, his calm professionalism steadied me, a flicker of hope in the storm of grief and betrayal that had consumed me since Marcus's funeral 2 days ago. Inside, the musty scent of old wood mingled with the sharp tang of furniture polish as Raymond, Patricia, Gerald, and Timothy froze, their hands caught mid-lute, my grandmother's rocking chair half-wrapped in a tarp by Gerald's van. "Mr. Coleman," Charles called, his voice cutting through the creak of floorboards, "you're removing property that belongs to Ashley. You need to stop now." Raymond's face flushed red, his eyes narrowing as he stammered. "This is family property. It's been ours for generations." Charles opened his briefcase, pulling out Marcus's will, and I felt the weight of 8 years of unfair treatment crash over me like a wave. My mind drifted back to that first dinner at the Coleman estate, 8 years ago, when I, a 9-year-old nurse with calloused hands from night shifts, stepped into their world of polished silver and inherited wealth. The dining room was cold, the air heavy with the scent of roasted lamb and the clink of wine glasses, as Patricia, her pearl necklace gleaming, sized me up like a specimen. "She's very practical," she'd said, her smile tight, as if my nursing degree was a stain on their family tapestry. Marcus, ever gentle, had squeezed my hand under the table, his warmth a quiet rebellion against their frost. But the Colemans never let me forget I was an outsider. At every family gathering, conversations hushed when I entered, their voices dropping to whispers about better matches for Marcus' daughters of their country club friends, girls with trust funds and private school pedigrees. Raymond had cornered me before our engagement, his study smelling of leather and cigar smoke, insisting on a prenuptial agreement. "Family property stays with blood, Ashley," he'd said, his tone patronizing. "The house, the land, the veterinary practice, these are Coleman legacies. Marcus is young, romantic, but business is business." I'd nodded, my stomach churning, not for their money, but for the insult that I'd married Marcus for anything less than love. Marcus had defended me, his voice firm. "Dad, we don't need to discuss this now." But Raymond pressed on, and I saw the doubt in his eyes, the assumption I was a gold digger plotting to steal their precious legacy. Over the years, their slights piled up. Patricia rearranging seating at Thanksgiving, so I sat at the table's edge, Timothy forgetting to invite me to family barbecues, Gerald joking about my hospital scrubs at Christmas parties. A good is article I'd read recently said 60% of women feel overwhelmed by in-law stress. And I felt that statistic in my bones. The constant pressure of their judgment grinding me down. To cope, I'd started seeing a therapist last year, inspired by a Psychology Today article on handling toxic family dynamics. Dr. Ellis, a kind woman with a soft voice, had sat across from me in her cozy office, the scent of chamomile tea calming my nerves. Ashley, their behavior reflects their insecurities, not your worth, she'd said, encouraging me to journal my feelings and seek support. You're not alone in this, find people who see you. Her words echoed now as I stood in my looted living room, the memory of a Reddit r divided by relationships post I'd made last night flashing in my mind. AITA for wanting to fight my in-laws who are stealing my home? I'd written, and the responses, hundreds of them, had poured in. NTA, they're toxic, get a lawyer, one user wrote, sharing a story of their own in-laws trying to claim a family cabin. Another linked a Brightside. Me article about setting boundaries with manipulative relatives, urging me to stand my ground. Their virtual support felt like a warm embrace, a reminder I wasn't as isolated as the Colemans wanted me to feel. But the memory that cut deepest came from 3 years ago. At Marcus's cousin's wedding, where I'd overheard the Colemans plotting to replace me. I'd slipped away to the restroom, the reception hall buzzing with laughter and the clink of champagne flutes, only to return and hear Patricia's venomous whisper. She's nice enough, but Marcus could do better. What about Emily? The Harrisons' daughter? She'd fit the family perfectly. Timothy had chimed in. Yeah. If we nudge Marcus toward someone more suitable, the property stays secure. My blood ran cold, the satin of my dress suddenly suffocating, as I realized they were already planning my exit. As if Marcus's love for me was a mistake to be corrected. I'd hidden in the bathroom, my hands shaking, until Marcus found me, his eyes soft with concern. Ashley, what's wrong? He'd asked, pulling me into his arms, the scent of his cologne grounding me. I didn't tell him what I'd heard, not wanting to burden him. But that night, as we drove home, the hum of the car engine filling the silence, I sensed a shift in him, a quiet resolve. Back in the present, Charles spread Marcus's will across the kitchen table, the paper rustling as the Colemans' faces twisted from arrogance to shock. This will, dated 6 months ago, leaves everything to Ashley, the house, the veterinary practice, all assets, Charles said, his voice steady. Marcus also changed the deeds to joint ownership with right of survivorship. Even without the will, everything is Ashley's. Patricia gasped, her hand clutching her necklace. She's not blood family, she protested, but Charles held up a hand. Under Virginia law, spouses have automatic inheritance rights. Marcus made his wishes clear. Gerald dropped a box of my china, the crash echoing, as Raymond slumped into a chair, his patriarch facade crumbling. I watched, my heart a mix of grief and vindication, thinking of Marcus's love, his quiet strength in protecting me. But later that night, alone in our bedroom, the scent of Marcus's cedarwood aftershave lingering on his pillow, I opened a drawer to find a folded letter in his careful handwriting, tucked beneath his old veterinary journals. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, the paper soft and worn, dated 3 years ago right after that wedding. Ashley, it began. If you're reading this, I fear my family's cruelty has outlived me. I've known for years they'd try to take everything from you. I won't let them. I've made plans. My breath caught, tears blurring the ink, as I realized Marcus had suspected their intentions long before his diagnosis, long before he told me about the will. What plans had he made? And what else had he hidden to protect me from the Colemans' greed? The soft glow of candlelight flickered across the walls of my Richmond, Virginia, Victorian home, but the warmth of the room couldn't pierce the icy dread that had settled in my chest since finding Marcus's letter last night. Its words written 3 years ago burning in my mind. I've known for years they'd try to take everything from you. I won't let them. My fingers still trembled as I clutched the worn paper, the faint scent of Marcus's cedarwood aftershave clinging to it. A haunting reminder of the man who'd loved me fiercely, despite his family's cruelty. The Colemans, Raymond, Patricia, Gerald, and Timothy had already shown their hand, looting my home the day after Marcus's funeral. Believing the house, his veterinary practice, and every heirloom reverted to their blood family. Charles Pedon, Marcus's estate attorney, had stopped them cold with the will and joint ownership deeds, but their shocked faces in my kitchen yesterday only fueled my fear they'd fight back harder. My mind spiraled back to 3 months before Marcus's death, to his cousin Walter's wedding, where the humid air of the Richmond banquet hall pressed against my skin, thick with the scent of roses and champagne. I'd excused myself to the restroom, the clatter of silverware and laughter fading, only to return and catch the Colemans huddled in a corner, their voices low but sharp. "When Marcus goes, the property comes back to us, right?" Timothy had asked, his tone casual, as if my husband's death was a business transaction. Raymond nodded, swirling his wine glass. "Wives get temporary rights, but the house, the land, the practice, that's blood family. Always has been." Patricia's voice dripped venom. "The only complication is getting Ashley to leave quietly. You know how these types cling to money." Gerald smirked. "Maybe she'll remarry fast and move on. Problem solved." My heart pounded, the satin of my dress sticking to my clammy skin as I hid behind a pillar, their words slicing through me. They'd been planning my erasure for years, treating me like a tenant in my own marriage. I'd slipped back to the restroom, splashing cold water on my face, the mirror reflecting my shaking hands, until I could face Marcus again. He'd been chatting with his uncle about wildlife rehabilitation, his eyes lighting up as he pulled me into the conversation, oblivious to their scheming. That night, driving home under a starless sky, the hum of our car's engine, a steady anchor, I'd told him what I'd overheard. "They're so sure about what happens if you die," I'd said, my voice trembling. Marcus's grip tightened on the wheel. His jaw set. "Ashley, I need to tell you something," he said, pulling into our driveway, the porch light casting shadows across his face. Inside, the kitchen smelled of the lavender tea we'd brewed earlier, and Marcus poured himself a glass of wine, his hands steady but his eyes heavy with sorrow. "I've known how they feel about you for years," he began, his voice low. "I kept hoping they'd change, but they won't." My breath caught as he revealed a truth that shook me. "2 years ago, my parents pressured me to divorce you. They said you weren't our kind, that I could do better. I told them I'd never leave you, that you're my family." Tears stung my eyes, the warmth of his hand over mine. A lifeline. As he continued, "I've had a will since we married, but after that wedding conversation, I knew it wasn't enough. I've been working with Charles Pedon. Everything, the house, the practice, all of it is yours if I'm gone." He pulled out a folder, its edges worn, revealing deeds and joint ownership with right of survivorship and a will leaving me everything. "They think family property is theirs by tradition," he said, "but they're wrong. Legally, it's ours." I was stunned, the weight of his foresight sinking in, but also the pain of knowing he'd carried this alone. Back in the present, as I sat on our couch, the creak of its springs grounding me, I opened my laptop, desperate for clarity. Inspired by the R divided by relationships support from last night, I posted on R divided by league advice. "My in-laws are trying to take my late husband's house, claiming it's family property. What are my rights as a widow in Virginia?" Responses flooded in, echoing a Reddit AITA story where a widow fought her in-laws over a family farm. "Spouses have automatic inheritance rights in Virginia," one user wrote. "Check for joint ownership or a will. Your in-laws can't just claim blood rights." Another linked a Brightside, me article on standing up to manipulative family, urging me to document everything. The good is statistic. 60% of women feel stressed by in-laws. Resonated. My exhaustion mirrored in their stories of betrayal. I called my sister Janet, her voice crackling through the phone, furious as ever. "They're delusional, Ashley. Marcus chose you, not them. Fight this." Her words echoed Dr. Ellis, my therapist, who'd told me last year, in her office scented with chamomile, "You're stronger than their rejection. Build a support network online. Friends, anyone." That network was saving me now. The Reddit stranger's advice fueling my resolve. But the Colemans weren't done. Yesterday, after Charles's bombshell, I'd overheard Patricia on the phone in my foyer, her voice smug. "We'll get a lawyer. She can't keep what's rightfully ours." Their arrogance, their belief I was powerless, ignited something in me. I thought of a YouTube revenge video from R, divided by pro-revenge, where a woman outsmarted her greedy in-laws with a hidden trust fund, their smugness crumbling in court. Marcus's letter, still in my hand, hinted at more protections, but what? I paced our living room, the floorboards groaning, the faint scent of old books reminding me of Marcus reading in his chair. I called Charles, my voice steady, despite the knot in my stomach. "They're planning to fight the will," I told him. "Let them try," he replied, his tone calm but firm. Marcus was thorough. "We'll meet tomorrow to go over everything." As I hung up, an email pinged on my laptop, the subject line from Charles Piton, "Urgent. Critical detail in Marcus's will." My pulse raced, the screen's glow illuminating the dark room. What had Marcus hidden in those documents that even Charles found urgent? And how would it change the battle looming with the Colemans? The morning sun streamed through the lace curtains of my Richmond, Virginia, Victorian home, casting golden patterns across the hardwood floors, but its warmth couldn't pierce the icy knot of anticipation, twisting in my stomach as I awaited Charles Piton, Marcus's estate attorney, who'd sent an urgent email last night, hinting at a critical detail in my late husband's will. A detail that could shift the battle against the Coleman family. Who'd stormed my home after Marcus's funeral, changing locks and hauling out my belongings, convinced the house, veterinary practice, and heirlooms belonged solely to their blood family. The faint scent of old wood and Marcus's cedarwood aftershave lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the life we'd built over 8 years, now under siege by Raymond, Patricia, Gerald, and Timothy, whose arrogance shone in their smug plan to sell my home and whispered schemes to erase me, had been checked by Marcus's foresight in securing joint ownership deeds, but their threats to fight back fueled my resolve. Inspired by a Reddit AITA post where a widow recorded her in-laws' schemes for legal leverage, I slipped my phone into my pocket, its record button humming softly, a secret weapon, as I braced for the confrontation. The doorbell's sharp chime cut through the silence, jarring my nerves, and I opened it to find Charles, his silver hair catching the light, his briefcase clutched tightly, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside me. Behind him, uninvited, stood the Colemans, Raymond's jaw clenched like a vice, Patricia's fingers white-knuckling her designer purse, Gerald shifting uneasily, his boots scuffing the porch, and Timothy staring at the ground, his usual smirk replaced by a flicker of fear. "Ashley, this ends today," Raymond growled, shoving past Charles into my living room, the floorboards groaning under his heavy steps as he loomed over me. "This house is ours, and no lawyer's trick will change that." Charles raised a hand, his voice steady as he set his briefcase on the kitchen table, the faint clink of its latches echoing in the tense air. "You're mistaken, Mr. Coleman," he said, spreading out Marcus's will, its crisp pages glowing under the chandelier's soft light. "This will, notarized 6 months ago, leaves everything to Ashley, the house, the veterinary practice, all bank accounts, investments, and personal property." Marcus also amended the deeds to joint ownership with right of survivorship, ensuring Ashley's legal rights under Virginia law. The room froze, the only sound Patricia's choked sob, her face crumpling as she clutched her pearl necklace, its beads clicking frantically. Gerald's hands fumbled, a box of my wedding photos crashing to the floor, glass splintering like their shattered confidence, while Raymond's cheeks flushed a furious crimson, his hands trembling as he gripped the table's edge. "That's a lie," he roared, his voice cracking with desperation. "Marcus would never cut us out. This is Coleman blood property." Charles pulled out a second document. Marcus's letter, its handwritten words soft and worn, a testament to his love and foresight. Marcus knew you'd try this, Charles said, his tone unyielding. He wrote this to make his intentions clear. As he read aloud, "To my family, if you're reading this, I'm no longer here to shield Ashley from your cruelty. You've dismissed her, belittled her, planned her exclusion, but she is my family, and I will protect her." Patricia's sobs grew louder, her hands covering her face as her socialite facade shattered on the couch, its springs creaking under her weight. Raymond's shoulders slumped, his patriarch bravado dissolving into a hollow stare, while Gerald muttered, "He wrote that about us?" His voice barely a whisper. Timothy, his face pale as ash, stepped forward, his voice quivering. "Ashley, I'm sorry if we hurt you. Can we just talk?" His weak apology, dripping with panic, echoed a YouTube R divided by pro-revenge story where a scheming sibling begged forgiveness after exposure. I locked eyes with him, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "You planned to steal my home while Marcus was dying, Timothy. There's no talking your way out of that." Patricia's sharp gasp filled the silence, her mascara smudging as she shook her head, while Raymond's gaze dropped to the floor, unable to meet mine. Charles pressed on. "Marcus included a no-contest clause. If you challenge this will, you forfeit any claim permanently. And by removing Ashley's belongings, you've committed theft, which I've advised her to report unless you return everything immediately." My phone, still recording, captured their stunned silence, a surge of empowerment coursing through me as I recalled the R, divided by relationships, community's support. "You're stronger than their greed." And my therapist Dr. Ellis's words in her chamomile-scented office, "Your worth isn't defined by their rejection." The Colemans scrambled, Gerald and Timothy hauling my grandmother's rocking chair back from their van, its wood creaking as they set it in the living room, the sharp scent of furniture polish stinging the air. Patricia whispered to Raymond, her voice trembling, "This will destroy our standing at the club." Her fear of social ruin palpable, a fear I'd read about in a Bright Side Me article on reclaiming power from toxic family, urging victims to stand firm. As they retreated, their trucks rumbling away, I stood in my kitchen, the warmth of Marcus's letter in my hands, his love a shield they couldn't breach. But later that evening, as I sat on the couch, its springs creaking softly, my sister Janet's text lit up my phone. "Ashley, my friend at the club overheard Patricia. She's hired a new lawyer who claims to have found an old will draft from before you married Marcus, one that names Raymond as executor. They think it could override everything." My heart raced, the glow of my phone screen cutting through the dark room, the faint hum of the furnace suddenly oppressive. An old will draft? How could Marcus's meticulous planning have missed this? And what was the critical detail Charles had wanted to discuss? The fight for my home and Marcus's legacy was far from over. The golden light of a new October morning poured through the lace curtains of my Richmond, Virginia, Victorian home, bathing the hardwood floors in a warm glow that felt like a quiet promise of peace after the storm of the past week. But my heart still raced from Janet's text last night, warning me that the Colemans, Raymond, Patricia, Gerald, and Timothy, had hired another lawyer to contest Marcus's will. Desperate to reclaim the house, veterinary practice, and heirlooms they believed were their blood family birthright. Their audacity, laid bare in parts 1 through 4, had already been crushed once by Charles Peyton's revelation of Marcus's comprehensive will and joint ownership deeds. His letter, exposing their 8 years of cruelty, snide remarks about my practical nursing career, whispered plans to replace me, and their brazen looting of my home the day after Marcus's funeral. Now, standing in my reclaimed living room, the faint scent of old wood and furniture polish grounding me, I clutched Marcus's letter, its worn edges soft under my fingers, his words a testament to his love. "I won't let them take everything from you." Charles had arrived yesterday, his silver BMW glinting in the driveway, to address the Colemans' latest scheme. And I'd recorded the meeting on my phone, inspired by a Reddit AITA story, where a woman documented her in-laws' threats to protect herself legally. Charles spread new documents across the kitchen table, the rustle of paper sharp in the tense silence, as the Colemans stood defiant. Raymond's face flushed with indignation. "We've got a new lawyer," he snapped, "and he says we can challenge this. That will's a fraud." Charles's calm voice cut through. "Your lawyer can try, but Marcus's no-contest clause is ironclad. Challenge the will, and you forfeit any claim permanently." Patricia gasped, her pearl necklace trembling, while Gerald muttered, "This is our legacy." Charles held up Marcus's letter, reading aloud its searing account of their mistreatment. Patricia's seating arrangements to isolate me, Raymond's prenup demands, Timothy's wedding day plot to secure the property. The Colemans' faces turned ashen, their social standing crumbling as word spread through Richmond's country club circles, a humiliation Patricia dreaded most. Her whispered, "This will ruin us," echoing a YouTube divided by pro-revenge video where greedy relatives lost everything after underestimating a widow's legal protections. By noon, under Charles's supervision, Gerald and Timothy returned every stolen item: my grandmother's rocking chair, its wood creaking as they set it back, my wedding photos, their frames scratched but unbroken. While Raymond paid to replace the locks they'd changed, his hands shaking with rage. The veterinary practice, which Raymond had promised to a new vet, remained mine, and their plans for Gerald's family to move into my home evaporated. That evening, alone in the quiet house, the soft hum of the furnace, a comforting backdrop, I reflected on the good. A statistic that 60% of women feel stressed by in-laws, my own burnout now easing as I stood firm. Inspired by a bright side, Me article on healing from loss, I joined a local grief support group, meeting in a cozy church basement, the smell of coffee and warm scones mingling with stories of love and loss. A woman named Sarah, who'd lost her husband to cancer, shared how she found purpose by honoring his passions, planting a seed in my mind. Marcus had loved his wildlife rescue work, staying up nights to save injured animals, so I decided to sell the veterinary practice. Its sale finalized last week for a substantial sum, and donated a third of the proceeds to his favorite animal rescue, the paperwork signed under the same chandelier where Charles had read Marcus's will. The decision felt like a weight lifting, the room's warmth wrapping around me like Marcus's embrace. The Colemans' downfall was complete. Patricia's socialite friends shunned her, whispering about their disgrace at the country club. Gerald's wife left him, furious over the lost family home, and Timothy's job prospects vanished when the new vet learned of his scheming. Raymond, once the proud patriarch, became a pariah. His lectures on family loyalty, mocked after Marcus's letter, exposed his cruelty. A Psychology Today quote I'd read in the grief group resonated. "Standing up for your rights is not just self-preservation, it's a declaration of your worth." I'd done that, not for revenge, but for Marcus, who'd seen his family's true nature years before I did, quietly building legal walls to protect our love. As I stood on my porch, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves, I realized Marcus's greatest gift wasn't the house or the money. It was the validation that our love was real, that I was worthy of his fierce protection. To you watching, I say this. Don't let anyone diminish your worth. Like a Reddit user who fought her in-laws over a family estate, or the R divided by pro-revenge, stories of triumph over greed, protect what's yours legally, emotionally, fiercely. As I stepped back into my home, the floorboards creaking under my feet, I felt a new beginning take root. A life rebuilt on the foundation of Marcus's love and my own strength, ready to face whatever came next with courage and hope.